Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first edition of Calling All Devs for 2020. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. Now, Calling All Devs is our question and answer show where we take questions from you, the Star Citizen community, and pose them directly to our developers over video conferencing. It's meant to simulate many of the same conversations that we have every single day. It's informal, it's candid, it's your questions put directly to the people most closely associated with the answer that's available for your question. And we usually put up a thread where folks can submit their questions and vote on which ones they want to see answered most. And we did that back in January. And to the surprise of virtually nobody, the number one most voted up question was about Squadron 42 and the Squadron 42 roadmap. So we thought to do more than just answer that question, we're going to take this first episode and theme it entirely for Squadron 42. So to start that off, we're going to start at the very top of Squadron 42's development and talk to Brian Chambers, our VP of Development. Brian, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Jared. How are you?
Welcome back to video, Brian.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been a while. It's been a spell, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's all right, though. It's good.
So,
good to be here.
Well, we'll see if you still feel that way by the time we're done.
See, I decorated for you.
Seriously, I did say.
Had I known you were
plant?
calling. Yeah. The plant's on the other side of the room, yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go, like I said, unrehearsed, real, raw. That's the Calling All Devs way. Before we get into the questions, for folks who may have joined the project since the last time you appeared on video, let's talk a little bit about who you are and what you do for Squadron 42.
Cool. As Jared said, I'm Brian Chambers. When I first started with CIG, my title was Development Director. So it was me and a handful of guys starting up the office here in Germany. And so I spent a few years really focusing on getting that team solid, in conjunction and working with Aaron on global development and looking at teams and seeing what we can help and push. Mid last year, roughly, we restructured a few things within the company with our growth. It just made sense to look at that and see, if the current structure we have still works for everybody. Part of that structure was to pull in studio managers for each office so they can work on the day-to-day stuff that just takes, to keep the lights on and general admin stuff and everything, right? That allowed me to then come and focus more on dev. So at that point, I became VP of development, and I now work really, really close with Aaron on a daily basis to drive the team globally, the development team. Come November, December, me and Chris and Aaron talking and looking across the projects and seeing how things were structured. We said, okay, with Squadron the size it is and what we want it to be as far as how it lives up there as far as expectations, it absolutely needed some more dedicated focus. So I am now primarily focusing on Squadron 42. Aaron's now primarily focused on the PU. We both have visibility and say on either side. A lot of stuff crosses the boundaries per se, right? So one call will actually works for both. But so yeah, my primary focus now is Squadron, working with the team every day, seeing what's going on with schedules and with progress, and yeah, it's going to be good.
Gotcha. And this kind of reorganization is a normal part of video game development. It happens in projects all over the place. It's not necessarily because of issues or problems and things. It's just that you always take those moments. So we usually do it at the end of one year, the beginning of another year, to take a step back, to reevaluate how things are going and to find ways to improve, to make things more efficient.
Yeah. No, it wasn't due to any deficiency. It was just now that we have a studio manager there and they can handle all this other stuff that I needed to take care of, that now frees up my time to go back to my roots, which is game development. And if I'm free and Aaron's free, let's split that focus so we can get some more of that dedicated attention. It's definitely a positive thing. And I'm excited about it. Working with the team, you see progress every day. It's good stuff.
All right, so you've been focused on this for a couple months now. Now you got to answer the big question here from the Star Citizen community. What's the deal with the Squadron 42 roadmap? Why haven't we updated it?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go get a drink.
3 hours later. Exactly. No, the roadmap, honestly, though, it's one thing that I've looked at more and more recently, and other people on the team, and we were scratching our heads too, going, "Wait, hold on, what's going on here?" Um, it the roadmap as it currently exists, starting chapters at the top, going to the bottom, and just spreading out horizontally, it doesn't make sense. There's so many things that we do. A majority of what we do crosses all chapters, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about mechanics, when you talk about technical work, and so on and so on, when we're working on characters and you're working, whatever it might be across most disciplines, it touches all chapters. So in theory, if you were to leave it as it is, all chapters would basically be done all at the same time. Right? We got every little thing, excluding a couple little bits that are going to be very specific and very unique. So, due to the nature of the development and what you push on, if we call it AAA or quadruple A or whatever it might be, it really doesn't work for the way. I think when we first started it was just logical. It was like, oh, let's put all the chapters down and we're cool. Right?
Follow a linear progression. It's easy to understand. It's not like we had an example to look at. There aren't other AAA games out there with a publicly facing development roadmap in their development. So we had to kind of figure this out as we went. We tried for a linear presentation, but as you're saying, development runs parallel.
Yeah, and I actually scrubbed through stuff the other day, not the other day, maybe a couple of months ago, looking, okay, what other AAA games are giving the level of detail that we do? And I think some had some roadmaps, but they're just kind of very chunky. Of like, hey, we're a quarter of the way done or halfway done, and so on, right? A big key thing for us, though, is we don't want to give away spoilers. It's incredibly important to me, and it's incredibly important to Chris that we hold that stuff tight, because we want that experience when we get into people's hands, that they play it and they experience it new. I'd rather not give away, although we may have already most of them, I'd rather not give away any more characters, locations, and it's actually hard when we do monthly updates and so on. There's a lot of stuff we get from the team that I'd prefer to publish that is awesome progress, has so many spoilers in it. I'm like, nope, can't do that. Nope, right? So it's a chore. However, if I say it's not, the current format doesn't work to show the progress the way that we think is the best, or in a format that makes sense for what we're doing. With that said, we're currently in the process of investigating new ways that we can provide information. Progress is being done every single day. Mm-hmm. Awesome stuff. We have global reviews with the directors and leads and Chris Roberts every single week, where we go over and see people's progress. So progress, really cool stuff is being done. So it's up to us to find a way that we can present that to everybody publicly, and that's something that we're actively looking into. Absolutely.
Right, so it's not all doom and gloom. We recognize that the roadmap for Squadron 42 isn't as effective a tool as we were hoping in conveying the information without spoilers, mostly due to its linear nature and our parallel development, not just between all the chapters, but our parallel development between Squadron and Star Citizen. It's Absolutely. Like that. It's very hard to present that in a way to backers in graph form and lines and everything that without the context that we can't give, because the context is all spoiler related. But it's not all doom and gloom. We do have a couple ideas. And we're still looking for more about how we can be more open about Squadron 42's development, how we can convey more information on its progress. And if I can, I'm going to put you on hold, and I want to bring Tyler Wicken into this call for our first Calling All Devs 3 call here. So give me a second. Let me see if I can make this work.
Cool.
Okay, so Tyler, we got Tyler online. How you doing, man?
Hey, good. You called me right as they're starting construction outside, so We'll see how this goes.
Hey, calling all devs is raw and real, unfiltered. It's just like we like it, including loud construction. I don't hear it right now, so we'll try to get through this
How
quickly.
you doing, Tyler?
I'm good. Good to see you. How are you?
Good. Germany's good. How's Texas?
It's good. Storming this morning. We had hail.
You done? You done? All right.
Sorry.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Calling out devs. Sorry.
All right, so we just got done talking about the roadmap and why it's not as effective as we'd like. But we are exploring some new communication options, some new ways to share Squadron 42's progress going forward. Tyler, I wanted you to walk us through some of what we're considering.
Yeah, sure. Oh man, where to start? So yeah, we've been thinking a lot about the roadmaps lately, and ultimately, we want to improve how we communicate in a variety of ways, so we can basically provide a better idea of what's being worked on, why something may have changed, etc. So, more specifically, we're looking at some creative ways that we think we can better illustrate our progress that ties closer into how we're blocking out our time internally. We're already well underway with exploring some creative options for how we can visualize that and how we can share that with everybody. But of course, it's going to take a little bit of time. But I think we think we're heading in the right direction. We think we're working on some stuff that you guys
As
are
far
going
as
to.
like blocking out time, I mean, some of that stuff we already do on the dev side as well. Where we block out sprints that guys are working on, and you can see their completion progress. So we even talked about maybe could that be existing information we have that pulls in, again, as long as it doesn't give away spoilers and so on. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we also recognize that as we're developing Squadron 42, much of that content ends up making its way into the PU, which is something that we feel we can track and also illustrate better. And so that's another thing that we're working on. But in the short term, obviously, you can still look forward to the monthly reports. You may have seen recently we did an AMA on prisons. So we would like to continue doing those AMAs more regularly and actually talk Squadron 42 when we can. Like Brian mentioned, we don't want to spoil the game, but as often as we can, when it makes sense, if we can do some AMAs surrounding different aspects of Squadron 42, we'll take those opportunities. One of the favorite parts of Inside Star Citizen, the sprint report, we're going to start leveraging the sprint report for Squadron 42 content again as often as we can. I mean, you kind of probably see the pattern here is that we just want to start injecting more Squadron 42 content into our regular communications, but also getting creative and seeing if we can introduce some new stuff. For example, we might do some fun regular video check-ins with Brian, with you, and the Squadron 42 team. You know about that, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But we've been talking about some fun ideas. I think that you guys are gonna like the direction we're gonna go with that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
We're exploring everything. I mean, we're looking at it from all angles. We've even had some discussion, as we've said, and everybody knows that a lot of the things that we do from Squadron make it to PU or PU to Squadron. So could we even have some type of shared map that calls out which ones are shared, which are unique, and so on? Because a lot of stuff you see on PU, although we're not loud about it, absolutely makes itself in a Squadron, right? So by nature, it already starts showing some of that progress there. It's just be us calling it out.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on the video side, opening up shows like Calling All Devs to host Squadron questions when appropriate. Maybe even an Inside Star Citizen segment here and there related to Squadron. Again, where we can find stories to tell that don't spoil the story being told. Basically, it's what it sounds like is we're gonna pull back the curtain. We're gonna push open the closed door as much as possible. It's gonna be slow at first. We got to be careful not to spoil anything and see what we can do. But yeah, it sounds like an exciting time to really see what we can do, see what new ways we can use to explore Squadron 42's development.
Yeah, I'd say the key takeaway is that we recognize that we haven't been able to share progress as effectively as we would have liked to with the way that we've been set up. And so we're kind of in an area now where we're willing to experiment, we're willing to tweak things and kind of see what we can do, to ultimately give more information. And I think that one of the big parts that I'd like to note is that, we're going to be looking to Spectrum. There goes the construction. We're going to be looking to Spectrum for y'all's feedback. We'll start a few feedback threads, and we want to hear, what you think with the direction that we're taking it. We want to hear your suggestions, and we want to keep that conversation open so that ultimately, we can give you guys as much information as we can.
without spoiling the game.
Exactly.
It's going to be a delicate balance, but
Yeah.
but between the three of us and everybody else that works here, I think we can pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm confident, that we'll find a way that's, informative and gives people a good idea what we're doing on a regular basis. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I think it's a good idea if I put a call out to some of the other creatives and developers of Squadron 42 and see what they're working on. So I'm going to let you guys go.
Cool.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah.
We haven't been on the show for a while.
No, I know. Thanks for calling.
We're
Your
bringing
timing
all
was
these
off, but it'll do.
bringing all these faces back. All right. Take care, guys.
All right. See you.
All right, so at this point in the show, we're going to put some calls into some Squadron 42 developers and get updates on their particular aspects. And we're going to start with Nick Elms, the creative director for Squadron 42. Nick, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Jared.
Okay.
Good to be here.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll see if you still feel that way by the time we're done. So let's start us off. What does a creative director do for Squadron 42?
Okay, as creative director on Squadron 42, I guess I'm steward for Chris's vision of the game. I work across the whole company to ensure that we're aligned on what's required across all teams to deliver this engaging cinematic experience that Chris has promised for Squadron.
All right. And I know a big chunk of your focus is the design aspects of Squadron 42. How is design structured for Squadron?
So in Squadron, we've split the design team into sort of three principal groups. You've got the FPS team, you've got the flight dogfighting team, and you've got the social team. They're all sat together here in the Wimsel office, so they all work seamlessly across the various game chapters. It's just that we have experts in various fields that drive elements of the game forward, maintaining consistency and quality across the game.
And folks who follow Star Citizen's development will notice that the ship combat, the FPS combat, and the social aspects are the same divisions we use for our AI as well.
Yeah. I mean, they work in tandem with those guys literally every day. The teams are in constant communication with the AI teams on the various aspects.
Cool. Now, we talked to Brian earlier about the roadmap and how difficult it can be to track progress on Squadron 42, at least publicly, without spoilers and stuff like that. We know that many aspects of Squadron 42 were developed in tandem with Star Citizen. What can we learn by looking at Star Citizen's development and apply that to where we think Squadron development is, or what we know about Squadron development?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, both Squadron 42 and Star Citizen are completely developed in tandem. So, what you're seeing in the flight model right now is what we have in Squadron. What you're seeing in the AI and the FPS side is what we have in Squadron. Again, that's something that we've actually seen as a big benefit for Squadron, because we can kind of refine that experience with the help of the backers. We can take the feedback of what people like and don't like and put it into Squadron and make sure that we're closer to the bullseye when the game comes out without spoiling anything, which is cool. We're not exactly where we want to be right now, but we're pretty close. We're getting closer by the day.
I think it's fair to say that that many people will share the sentiment that it is not where we want it to be. But as we review, as we re-examine at the top of every year, find new ways to improve stuff. We've done things like create the vehicle experience team to help refine the flight model. We're going to talk to Francesco Riccucci about advances in AI that we've made a little bit later. I think we're really posed to make some terrific progress this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had some really good hires, some new additions to the company that really made a difference in those areas.
We talked about how things are similar. One of the things that Squadron has that the Star Citizen doesn't are the heavy narrative scenes. What can you tell us about the development of those?
Yeah, I mean, that is obviously one of the pillars of Squadron 42. It's very cinematically driven, and that's how Chris has wanted it to be. So, we've got the addition of these sort of heavily narrative scenes that drive the story forward. We're shooting for a level of immersion that I guess you won't have seen in most games previously. You're not just a disembodied ghost spectator on conversations. When you go there, you can break out, you can abandon, you can rejoin conversations. They'll time out. You actually feel like you're actually part of the scene completely, and that's quite engaging. I mean, obviously, rudeness will carry a negative marker. So if I wander off in the middle of a conversation with you, but we have that even filter into the story as well. So if you upset someone, then later on they might be rude to you.
It sounds very complex.
It is, yeah. But overall, it does. It makes you feel part of the crew. You feel like you're there. which is good.
Before I let you go, I'm gonna poke you for something. Is there something you can update us on that isn't spoiler related today? Some aspect of development that we recently completed or recently made great progress on?
Yeah, I guess if I'm looking for a non-spoiler, which is always quite difficult at Squadron, we've recently been working on the new female player PCAP. As with everything in Star Citizen Squadron 42, it's more than just a head and voice replacement. We're integrating a full performance to each scene to enhance the experience, of a gender choice in the game. So, if you choose the female character, you will have a different performance within the game. Chris has been vocal in the past about almost presenting the cinematic and story elements of the game as a direct to cut kind of thing. But we've always said, we're going to allow the player to wiggle out of that and experience it the way they want to. So you will see the nuances of a female performance within the same scenes if you choose that gender now in the game.
And with all the subtle differences in the storytelling and the performance of other characters that might entail.
Yes, yeah, that's it. You've got a lot of slightly different interactions as well in there. So it's going to be interesting. We shot quite a lot of scenes for that. So it's a lot of work, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I suppose it adds to the replay value too, because you can go through playing with one gender and then go through and play with the other gender and see the differences. I know folks of a lot of other single player RPGs, and we won't name names here, enjoy seeing the differences between the performances. So I was really excited to hear that we were actually pursuing that as well. So,
yep.
And of course, the recent filming we just did was not the first time they were pickups. It was additional filming with our female player character.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know in future obviously we are going to be doing pickups here and there for a lot of the story elements as they develop.
Cool. All right, Nick, I think we got it. I'm going to let you go. Welcome back to talking about Squadron 42.
Thanks, Jared. I'll try and be less wooden next time.
Oh, you were great, man. All right, take care. All right, thank you so much, Nick. Now, for our next topic, we know that the community has a lot of questions about AI, specifically how it relates to Squadron 42, so we are going to Francesco Riccucci in our Frankfurt studio and see what he has to say. Francesco, how you doing, man?
Hi, everything good.
So I'm going to get right into it because I have a feeling you got a lot to talk about. AI. We all know how important AI is to the persistent universe, but it seems like for Squadron 42, it's kind of everything. So tell us, give us an update on AI and where it's at right now.
Cool. So, as you guys probably already know, AI is exactly the same between PU and Squadron in the sense that we use the same system, we tend to use the same type of behavior structure, we tend to use the same core functionalities. So right now, our major focus is split between our three subsystems, sub-teams. So we have social, ship, and combat. Social team is mostly focused on improving on the stability of our usable system, how we can basically improve our pipeline to allow designers to construct and build new behaviors, new content very quickly for Squadron. For example, creating scenes that are required for the story in a much more efficient way compared to what we were doing before. Allowing multiple disciplines working at the same time, like cinematics with level design and so on. Ship has been in the past year one major point of improvements for us. We've been working very closely with physics guys to get to the new 3D pathfinding functionality that we just released in 3.8, and we are going to release with new updates in 3.9. 3D pathfinding basically doesn't use any of the classic approach to AI pathfinding. So we didn't want to have AI the requirement of building new knowledge about the system, evaluating physics, creating our own graph, and then parsing it to find a point A to point B path. What we wanted to do was to use as much as possible information we already have, even to optimize performances. So we used the SDF from physics, so the distance field calculation, to understand which objects we have near us, and then we basically start from the assumption that we can fly anywhere, and then we just need to find the best approach to reach that location. And then we basically fly around in our close environment, avoiding obstacles, avoiding terrain, avoiding planets, avoiding asteroids. And basically, this is also very important for collision avoidance to predict where ships are gonna move and so on. And basically, yes, this is a major improvement that we released, and it's gonna be part of Squadron. Also, for example, to have cases where a ship is leading another ship, or a ship is leading the player is leading the AI. Then we have FPS combat that has had the main focus basically on the refactor of the combat behavior. What we wanted to achieve was a behavior that was very modular. So what we do is we structure the behavior in a way in which we have different tactics that can be performed, and those tactics are also basically being able to handle cases where we want to, I don't know, reload because we don't have enough bullets for the next tactic we want to use, or we have different weapons. If we have a shotgun, we want to use specific approach techniques, but if we have a rifle, we want to do something different. Besides that, the team has been focusing on improving a lot the cover generation system. So now we have not only cover location, but also what we call gray covers, that are covers that are good if nothing better is around, pretty much. So we can use basically any metric for the environment to progress and getting close, letting the AI getting close to the player. And then we also are improving the perception system. We want to use more information about the room system to propagate audio around and make sure that the AI reacts correctly to the player.
Gotcha. And folks who have been watching ISC for the last year, I've seen a lot of stuff about the bartender updates. Tell us what the bartender. The bartender stuff is more than just a bartender.
The bartender, absolutely.
The bartender is just the wrapper that we're using to develop this. So what are we developing with the bartender?
So basically, what we're doing with the bartender and why we are working for so long the bartender is because the bartender is one of these classic examples that encapsulates so many different problems that are used in different behaviors. So first of all, right now the bartender is actually just a vendor. So we have vendors in Squadron 42 and we have vendor in PU, and there would be no difference in behavior except like their attitude, their skill, and their personality, right? So some bartenders might ask you what you want, some bartenders might not ask you, or some vendors actually might not ask you what you want, and they're just gonna wait for you to interact with them. Or some vendors might take back the object that you asked to look at before they show you another one. Some won't. So the bartender has this very complex environment where we have a super realistic bar, right? Where you can create cocktails, you can create bar, you can pick up objects from pre-existing location. Let's say you have a fridge with beer bottles, right? Those beer bottles already exist. You just want to pick them up. But if you are creating a cocktail, well, you have the original sources for that type of drink, right? You have maybe a cola, you have whiskey, and you want to mix them up, and you want to put like a slice of lemon on top of the glass, right? And this is what we are working on. Basically, our system right now allows all of those. That means that designers will be able to create a lot of content very easily, starting from that template, not just for vendors, of course, but vendors will be a major part already of the PU releases, and there will be characters in Squadron, for providing you weapons or providing you other stuff. And so this is why it's taking so long, and it's also taking resource from code and design to work tightly close to each other so that we can basically get the best out of those systems.
Yeah. Well, it's very easy to see the benefits of ship AI and FPS combat AI in the the combat aspects. The bartender is representative of the social AI aspects. Anybody who's played the old Wing Commander games remembers going into the mess and talking with shotgun or shot glass and getting the gossip of the day. It's and you don't just want them to recite things. You want complex actions and them to feel like a living, breathing person. And the bartender is our gold standard, if you will, for all of our social interactions that'll happen with every vendor throughout Squadron 42.
Absolutely. So, vendors are the central place, in every role-playing, sci-fi or fantasy that, the center of the world.
And we want more than just vendors that show up and say, nope, we don't have that.
Exactly.
Nope, we don't have that. Nope, we don't have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Francesco, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. But rest assured, before this is all said and done, we're going to be back with more questions. I can guarantee it.
It's going to be my pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Bye. Bye-bye.
All right, so now, last but certainly not least, on our extra long, extra length, supersized, calling all devs, all about Squadron 42. We can't talk Squadron 42 without calling up my good friend, at least I think his friend, we're going to find out, Nate Dearsley, Squadron 42 art director. Nate, how you doing?
That was amazing. You got to keep that in.
Yeah, how you doing, man?
Apart from trying to have a cup of tea, I'm good.
Yeah, what you didn't see is he was literally about to... Yeah, okay. So, we're leaving it in. It's raw. It's real. Nate, how you doing? You're the art director for Squadron 42. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been a long road putting this show together, but we're here at the end now. I want to ask you a couple questions. The last big update we had about Squadron 42 was that visual update that we put out in December, on or about Christmas. What's the story behind that? Because I know that didn't come around as a marketing thing we wanted to put out to the community. How did that come about?
I wanted to do something that sort of, push the envelope a little bit more as a closeout for the year, so everyone can go home from the Christmas holidays and be motivated about kind of coming back in the new year. It's been a tough one, and so I went through the year of data, the year of visuals, collated all that information, and pretty much kind of cut it all together into like one edited video to show to the entire company, internally only at that point. I think the original video was just over 10 minutes long. There was an awful lot of content. Yeah. Like it had characters in it, it had lots more cinematics and everything. And then, of course, it's funny because I showed it and everyone was quite silent in the meeting. I was like, oh, there we are then. And then I get the email from Chris. Hey man, like this was really cool. We should totally do something with this. We should show our backers it. And then long story short, we just basically went through all of that footage, removed anything that was too spoilery, because obviously with it being a narrative-driven game, it's very hard to show content to the outside world without spoiling certain characters, without spoiling certain story moments. And
that's been a theme of this episode so far, is the spoiler.
Right. Yeah, I mean everything's quite sensitive. Like there's not really much that goes on in the story that would give stuff away, if that makes sense. So for example, if we just showed you one character, you just go, okay, I get it. Like I know who he is in the script, and I'll just ruin it for you. So yeah, want to avoid that. So yeah, and that's how we kind of ended up with that. Basically like show and tell. Like it's certainly not finished, it's not polished. I'd say visual quality wise we're probably about 40% in that video. There's still a lot to do visually, but yeah, I think it's coming together, and it's really nice actually seeing the video where it shows how, I guess, sort of like diverse the locations are. Like the game's not going to suffer with visual fatigue in the slightest. It's one of the key things I wanted to avoid. So yeah.
Cool. Now we showed that then. How have things progressed since? I know it's only been by the time this airs, it's only been about 2 months, maybe 3 months since the visual update went out. How are things progressing visually for Squadron 42 in general?
So visually, it's pretty much we're on a curve up. Game devs kind of, if I just draw a curve, it's kind of like this for a long time, and at the end of the process it goes straight up to the top, so it's not a linear curve, but I think we're just approaching that kind of crest now. But yeah, we've sort of come in the new year. It's always nice to kind of get that break and then just really sort of resurvey like how the team's operating and how the teams are split up and what are they focusing on. We have our internal reviews as well, so it's a good time for us all to sort of speak about the project, get a lot of stuff out in the open, and just really kind of work on that feedback as a team. But as for the game as a whole, like it's genuinely like really beginning to come together now. Like we had Chris here week before last, and it was really refreshing to be able to sit down in what was a 6-hour review at the end of it. The game, okay, it crashed once. That's sort of unheard of at this point in dev, and pretty much everything was beginning to work. One of the most technical aspects of the game was running, and people were doing their things, NPCs were doing their things, you could speak to people, have conversations with people, you were in the Idris floating around this system and looking outside at the epic view, and when you see these little nuggets kind of coming in, it's really sort of helpful and really motivational. So yeah, visually it's just sort of like, you know, continue to grow on that momentum now. Obviously we've got planet-side locations in development, we've got stations in development, ships, other ships from other races we're trying to go into, all sorts, a bit of everything. And part of that kind of like the review process is also always trying to find, it's really trying to make the most of people's passion. Mm-hmm. So I'd never want, you know, someone on the team to be working on something that they don't want to work on, if that makes sense. You're not going to get much out of them. So yeah, that's generally what's been happening. And of course, dare I say it, there's a lot of cool stuff being put together for a certain show at the end of the year. So yeah.
I don't think we can say that.
Why? Why can't you say that?
We'll see if that stays in the edit or not. All right. So
start again. Start again.
Nope. We won't start. No, we're gonna keep going. All right. So we're off the rails now. All right. Since you're in the mood to share, Nate. Jeez. Since you're in the mood to share, Nate, I know from working with you as long as I have that you've always got something up on your screen. You're doing some review. You're doing some. What's on your screen right now? Can you share it with us?
What I've normally got on my screen is I'm hunting for faults. I'm jumping in and finding things that we can improve on or anything like that. But no, I'm an individual who likes to lead by example. So I try and stay completely in touch with the game dev cycle and be completely hands-on with it, right? So, but yeah, I mean, I've got one of our stations in front of us that I'm going through. It's not 100% finished yet. There's like 2 areas which I can actually show you. You can see what this sort of looks like mid-dev.
We're not usually a visual show. We're usually a talking head show, but let's end on a high note here. What can you show us? Okay. And I haven't seen this. This is as true and honest as can. I don't know what we're about to see here.
No, I'm just in here balancing the lighting at the moment. So yeah, it's Asiedo station. You'd have seen this briefly in the trailer, certain areas of it at least. I'll just sort of pull you out and just sort of go through some of the setup of this stuff. So it's one of our comms arrays, set up by Asiedo. You have to excuse some of my shadow issues. We've got static shadow region issues at the moment. And obviously you'll notice this is in completely black space because this is an object container setup, and these object containers get stuck into the larger system later. We don't sort of author them where they are. But without further ado, just sort of like let's jump in and I can show you the setup of you know how this thing lives and breathes. It is very much similar to what we would do on a ship. It has its own power systems, it has its own comms, it has everything that it needs to function correctly. So on entering this space, it's not, you'll probably notice it's not a sterile station. There is obviously kind of story elements that are going on here. And the main story element for this station in particular is that it's sort of like in the process of being decommissioned and ultimately recycled. So this is the comms center room. You'll notice dark side is generally the bit that's being decommissioned. Everything's starting to get covered in, you know, cellophane and cloth and whatnot. But if you come through the other side, you'll see that this side is still operational and is functioning as you'd expect it. So yeah, I'm sorry if I've made people dizzy because I'm one of these people that just looks around at everything as I'm going around.
Nate, thank you so much, man. We're going to let you go. This is, of course, just one room of a fully explorable station. It looks terrific, man.
My pleasure.
Guys, remember, Calling All Devs. Calling All Devs will be back in a couple weeks with a second episode. We'll be back to answering your questions as you guys submit them in the thread and vote them up. For Calling All Devs, I want to thank Brian Chambers. I want to thank Tyler Wicken. I want to thank Nick Elms. I want to thank Francesco Riccucci, and of course Nate Dearsley for taking the time for this special extended edition Squadron 42 based version of Calling All Devs. And we'll see you next time.